up, and welcome back to Interpreting the Scares. That's right, we're continuing on our October journey of horror films with Resident Evil. This, of course, is the 2002 adaptation of the popular video game series that spawned its own popular film franchise starring Mila Jovovich. You can't really call any of these movies that I'll be talking about horror, though. They're much more action-oriented than anything else, so if I were to truly interpret the scares, this would have to get a glowingly horrible score. But that's not what I'm going to be doing. I'm just reviewing this like I would any other movie because horror in general spans several different areas, including horror comedy, which also doesn't scare the audience, but lives within the horror realm. That being said, the first Resident Evil film is probably the most horror adjacent versus any of the other films in the franchise. So let's keep on going with our month of supernumerary frightening films, and let's get cracking. This review is brought to you by the word of the day, supernumerary, being in excess of the usual, proper, or prescribed number, aka additional or extra. Resident Evil focuses on Alice, a woman who wakes up in a mansion with acute amnesia. She doesn't know who she is or why she's there. When a group of elite military individuals show up, they take her underground to a highly guarded secret called the Hive, where she learns that before she lost her memory, she protected and guarded the entrance to the Hive, but something recently happened inside that killed everybody, and they are sent to investigate what happened and why, only to discover that the people that were killed in the Hive were beginning to reanimate as zombies who henceforth begin attacking the military men and women. If you're a fan of the early video games, then there's a lot to appreciate here, as I feel like this first film has the most shout-outs to those earlier games in the series, especially that mansion. I can't say that I'm well-versed in the games, but I did play the first one, and that took place in the mansion, and I still remember the first shot of a zombie. You're walking around that corner, you hear something, but you don't know what it is. It's a slow and tense reveal, and when it happens, it's the stuff of nightmares. I still remember walking down that corridor with the windows that shatter and the zombie dogs show up. I remember it all. And I don't have the best memory. I don't have a lot of memories of older video games, but that one though, woo! Now, maybe it's all because I was young and impressionable, because nowadays most of that would most likely be laughable, but because it came out in my lifetime, it's somewhat nostalgic, so I like the mansion was in this movie, even if it was just a shout out. Because like I said, it's not exactly a horror-specific film. It has its moments here and there that are scarier than any of the other movies in the series, but they are far and few between because this truly is an action-heavy film more than it is anything else. I did want to mention that Mila Jovovich was such a perfect choice for the role. I believe I once read that before they ever made this movie, Mila expressed interest in being included in a future project because she was a fan of the games. And I'm glad that's the case because I can't even imagine a Resident Evil movie or TV show without her. She is that iconic in the series. I mean, she will be. The first film, she has her positives, but she hasn't found her place as action star yet. For the most part, she's a bit of a Jason Bourne type character in this first movie because she has amnesia, and throughout the film, she slowly begins to realize who she is, and that she can do a little bit more than she thought possible, and there's all these secrets surrounding her that she begins to unravel. That's actually one of the biggest strengths of this film. The mystery, something the later films don't really have. Unfortunately, I feel like the story in this movie is relatively lacking. It's one of the only films in the series that actually feels like a basic video game plot with various levels to get from point A to point B, but that's as deep as the story gets. There's a couple of really memorable sequences in the film, one particularly towards the beginning of the movie with a room full of lasers that's really cool, but I feel like a majority of the action set pieces in this film feel relatively filler. You know, where it just feels like a typical let's just shoot the zombies to shoot the zombies because they're zombies scenes. They don't individually feel that important to what's going on. Beyond that, this film has a mixture of good and bad graphics. When it comes down to the good graphics, you have decent costume makeup and practical effects, but on the other side entirely, you have these creatures that show up that are called lickers. Now, the lickers in this movie are crafted entirely out of CGI. There's close-up shots of the lickers that are practical effects, so those actually look pretty decent. But unfortunately, there's not many of those. And in 2002, the creature's full CGI look looks awful. I mean, it looks just a little bit better than PlayStation 2 graphics, and anytime they show these creatures, I just get pulled out of the film. Overall, I'd basically say that this is one of the more important films in the film saga, but in general, it's probably not the strongest. Neither in visuals, story, or character development. Even though Mila's in this as Alice, she isn't truly Alice yet. Take that as you will, and let's take a look at the final score for a second. From an unbiased technical level, a majority of this film was safe. Nothing from a cinematography level stood out, there wasn't too much depth in the film, and the character development wasn't as interesting as later films, but it is the most important film in the saga, so I'll give that unbiased score 66%. And my bias score is a little bit higher at 76%, because as a general rule, it's definitely just a fun movie that started something really massive. When we average the two scores together, we come to the final rating of 71%, 71 out of 100 possible stars, or a C- letter grade. This score was actually really close to my original rating when I first reviewed it, which was 72%. Just 1% off by complete coincidence. Crazy. When I originally reviewed movies, I didn't have a rating model. I just went with a number that felt right to me. It's amazing how often that score is nearly identical to my now calculated scores that I have today. I just find that interesting. Anyways, guys, let me know your thoughts on this 2002 Resident Evil film in the comments down below. Are you a fan of this film saga? As for YouTube, you guys know what to do. Hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed this review, because there's always more like it coming out each and every single day. Hit the subscribe button and bell to be notified when I come out with my review for Resident Evil Apocalypse. And until then, peace out!
Dave examines movies we just watch for fun. Davey is the expert. He is the #1 critic that I go to when I need a movie pick. Thanks for joining up with us.